You're not right, Dr. Lovelle, but you're charming. Hello, Raleigh. Robert Courts here with Your Backyard's Monday COVID-19 quarantine update. And as usual, we have our local expert, Dr. Susan Lovelle of Premier Wellness. Thank you once again, Dr. Lovelle, for joining us today.
So thrilled to be here.
If y'all did hear that, Dr. Lovelle was just being silly and we were having a good time.
Never.
She is human and we had a nice little spell. But today, back to the COVID-19, let's start with some statistics, please.
Yeah. So actually, the nation as a whole and North Carolina specifically are now trending more towards the green, which means that our rates of our rates are starting to go down again, which is wonderful. Yeah.
Thank you. We needed some encouraging news. I really appreciate that.
Exactly.
Seems maybe we're turning a corner of some sort. But let's continue to talk about some statistics, if you don't mind, Dr. Lovelle. I'm hearing a lot of conflicting things about the death rate. And I hear people say something like, it's not as bad as the Spanish flu, or, only 1% death rate. And that's not correct, is it? Do we really know what the death rate measures? Can we start there, please?
Yeah, so essentially what we should be measuring, and that's something that you need to look at when you're looking at any stats, wherever you're checking them, is to look at whether or not they are looking at death rates for COVID-19 specifically, not for the United States, not for the the population in general, but specifically for those who have a diagnosis of COVID-19.
Well, Jonathan shared with us from the World Health Organization that 1 in 30 people who contract the disease pass, right? Mm-hmm. And that's 3%. We had another death rate of earlier in early June, so a little dated, of 5.8%. But that's extraordinarily high, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I think, though, as we start to, and that is very high. So, I mean, the regular thing for the flu is somewhere around 1%. Mm-hmm. So that would be significantly higher. However, as we start testing more, we'll also start to see those numbers come down as well. The more numbers you have, then the death rate doesn't change any.
Right.
It's just you're comparing to those numbers that we have of actual diagnoses.
Okay.
So, in one case, I think we had mentioned this before, it's not a bad thing to test. It's actually giving us the information we really need.
Right. Absolutely. Let's transition into some other things. The death rate is not the sum total of how the COVID is affecting patients. There's a lot going on, even if you survive. Can we chat a little bit about that, please, Dr.?
Yes. And that actually is very concerning and should be concerning to essentially everyone. I think we had mentioned previously about the Red Sox pitcher who developed a heart inflammation after recovering from COVID-19. Now, he didn't even have a very significant case. And this is what we're seeing now, that you don't have to be in the intensive care unit. You don't have to have really horrendous symptoms initially to have these long-standing sequelae afterwards. Okay. And what we're seeing is like he had a heart inflammation. So that's one of the places that the specific virus will hit. The lungs we knew about, but the heart, joints, these are all things that we're starting to see now.
What is the possible result from heart inflammation?
Death. But even more significantly, there is this long-term, and I mean, when I long-term, I don't mean months, I mean years of fatigue and, the heart just not functioning the way that it should. These are the possibilities. Same thing with the lung. So right now we're seeing that if someone has a particularly bad lung problem to begin with, or if they have some other comorbidities like high blood pressure, diabetes, that they might see more lung scarring. But if you think about that, if your lung is scarred, it's not going to expand as well. You're not going to get oxygenation as well. You're going to suffer with shortness of breath again for a longer period of time.
So let this be a cautionary tale. I see so many people going out there, I'll survive, I'll be fine. But here's a professional athlete, presumably in the peak of health, with
Ex-
a whole national organization around to keep him at the peak of the health, who now has heart inflammation that could affect his career and his life permanently. So,
Exactly. Exactly.
um, do you have a short list of scary symptoms that might result after catching COVID?
Absolutely. Unfortunately. So we just talked about the lung scarring, we talked about the heart inflammation, but there's another big one is chronic fatigue. So just being exhausted for, forever how long that is. Brain fog is another issue that people, who were previously very high functioning just can't seem to get back into their thoughts and their patterns and their standards from previously.
That
Uh,
one particularly scares me because I'm in a one-third fog at any given time. So,
yes.
another one, Dr. Lovelle.
No, no comment on that, right?
You let
Uh,
me go, but please continue.
right, right. The shortness of breath we just talked about, and then some other places that same receptor that the virus hooks onto, like we talked about heart and lungs, but it can also hit blood vessels, which is why we're seeing those clots that are developing afterwards, and also the kidneys, so kidney issues afterwards. So it really, I mean, it's wide open, really, the kind of sequelae that we could possibly see. And the best thing is just don't get in the first place.
Right, right. I'm sure that some of these overlap too, right? You don't just get one or the other.
E-
You can get multiple, and then really be in. I survived only to be in very diminished health.
Exactly, exactly.
I've been hearing that the we're less concerned now as a nation about picking up the virus via touch, that we still need to clean and wash our hands, but predominantly it's a respiratory, and
Mhm.
we need to keep covered. And is that correct? Are we still a little less worried?
Yes, yes. So the concern about it living on surfaces for extended periods of time, we're realizing that that is not as big a factor, what we call a vector in the transmission. That is more the respiratory droplet.
So masks still going a long way and staying separated.
Hmm. Yeah.
Well, anything else you want to add, Dr. Lovelle, other than wake up, wear your mask, and be safe?
As I mentioned, just continue to take best care of yourself. That's the best thing that we can possibly do at this point. And know that if for whatever reason there is someone who's listening to this who did have COVID-19, that there is a COVID symptom study that's being done online. And if you are interested in being a part of that, just so that we have, again, more information about what's going on and what the possibilities are, then that's something that people could join as well.
Well, thank you. We will put some information about that in the notes when we post. So, Raleigh, hear me now, believe me later. And if you don't believe me, I understand. A brain fog, I get it. But that's Dr. Susan Lovelle, okay? World renowned surgeon, medical doctor, all around groovy chick. You should listen to what Dr. Lovelle has to say. And Dr. Lovelle, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate your time and support.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
All right. Bye bye, Raleigh. Join us here next week.
See ya.
Be silly again.
Not us. No.